Well, as you know, our email here at Blue Sky is always open 24/7, as they say. It's bluesky@cbc.ca. And earlier this week, we received this email from Dennis, who writes, as an actively practicing member of the Roman Catholic Saskatoon community, I was disgusted last Friday, that was May 26th, when I became aware of the contents of a leaked internal email from the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools leadership, board members and executive members, to principals. The email directed principals to quietly and verbally advise teachers and parent chaperones of children being taken to the upcoming Children's Festival to avoid the rainbow tent. The rainbow tent is an important part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community and the overall community. The GSCS, that's Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools, revealed position does this. A, it causes feelings of exclusion and hurt to the 2S LGBTQ plus community members. B, potentially robs Greater Saskatoon Catholic School students of a valuable educational growth experience. And C, seriously damages the already doubtful GSCS image as Christian. However, the following Saturday, which was May 27th, the GSCS leadership managed to make its seriously tarnished image even worse. In a statement clouded by philosophical poppycock, the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools said it apologized, but it did not withdraw the initial injurious and hurtful directive. Thus, the GSCS continues to exclude and hurt 2 SLGBTQ plus people. I find this insincere and non-Christian. Given that the Greater Saskatoon Catholic School Board and executives carry on most of their business in camera, aka in secret, one is certainly left wondering where Christianity fits with whatever else atrocities are being done at the leadership level. One wonders what atrocities are being done at the leadership level of other school districts, again, in camera. As odious as the GSCS leadership position remains, I submit that it is not the position of all GSCS board members and executive, and certainly not that of the vast majority of principals and teachers. Maybe some transparency is needed at the GSCS leadership level. That came to us from Dennis Hall in Saskatoon, and that leads us to today's discussion. June is just around the corner, and schools across the province are making decisions about how they're going to celebrate Pride Month. While it's often a time of celebration of flag raising and rainbow days, this recent controversy with Saskatoon Catholic Schools has been met with shock and anger. Well, today on Blue Sky, we are going to hear from a former Catholic school student who has a message to queer students in Catholic schools. We'll also hear a now retired teacher in Saskatoon who started the first GSA in Saskatchewan 20 years ago. And later in the program, we'll hear from educators who are working in Regina schools, trying to make them safe and inclusive spaces for LGBTQ plus students and staff. Now, Regan Wilson wants queer kids to know they belong in Catholic schools. That's why they decided to speak out against the Catholic Division for not allowing children to visit the rainbow tent at the Children's Festival. The division later issued a statement saying families at Catholic schools have a reasonable expectation that students will be taught age-appropriate material that is consistent with Catholic teachings. Well, Regan Wilson is a trans, non-binary lesbian who uses they, them as pronouns. They joined Saskatoon morning host Candace Lipsky, and Candace started by asking Regan what kind of reactions they've received since posting online.
Honestly, it's been quite amazing. I've had no negative reaction. I've had huge amounts of people reach out, both peers and family, but also people I didn't know. And honestly, a huge number of them were people of the Christian and Catholic community reaching out and being like, you know what, this is right. Our teachings are that we are intending to love and respect all people, and that is the fundamental teaching. And so they had really been hurt by this email as well. And so, yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. I really loved the reaction that I've gotten.
What thought did you put into the decision to speak out?
I think initially when I read the email, my initial reaction was just that I was hurt, and I was going to send an email to the director of education and the superintendent. And as I was doing that, I kind of realized that they weren't really necessarily the only people that needed to hear what I had to say, because if I as an adult was that hurt by what I had read and by the realization that maybe my safety net as a child had been taken away, it was current queer students that needed to hear that message, and that there was people out there that didn't think along the same lines as that email. And so that was when I decided to speak out, was really that it was so much more important that the public heard that there is people out there and that the public saw the support that I knew I was going to get from, a part of the community. I was surprised with how big the support was, but I thought it was important for current queer students to see that as well.
If you had been a young student in school and, were hearing about all of this, how do you think it would have impacted you?
I think it would have been sad for me. I had a lot of really great support going through elementary school and high school, a lot of really great teachers and mentors. And I think it would have really been like a rude awakening to believe that maybe that safe space that I went into every single day wasn't maybe as safe as I thought it was. And since I put out this message, I've been able to, build back my belief in humanity and belief in so many of those teachers that I was right to put my trust in them. But when you're school division, maybe you can't put your trust in. That's a really scary feeling. And so, I feel for those students and that feeling that they must be having.
You wrote that queer kids belong in Catholic spaces. Why do you think that?
I think, I am no longer a part of the Catholic Church, but I grew up in the Catholic Church. And one of the fundamental beliefs that I was taught time and time again is that all human beings are deserving of love and are deserving of respect. And so even if you don't, even if the Catholic Church doesn't believe in gay marriage or whatever it may be, you still deserve to be loved and respected by those people. And so even if every interaction isn't the best interaction, you still deserve to take up space. And you still belong there, even if there is, a handful of people that don't think you do. You can believe in yourself and you can believe that you belong there.
What would your message be to queer kids? What do you want them to know?
I think that's the biggest message is that, you deserve to take up space. And even if you're in a place in your life where you're not necessarily seeing people that are supporting that message, that you can take up space, that there are so many people out there. That's one of the huge things that I learned from putting out this message was there's, hundreds of people that have liked the post and reached out to me saying, yes, we support you. Yes, we support this message. And so as a queer student, if you aren't seeing that support in your day-to-day life, just know that there are people out there. You are going to find your community. And one of the huge blessings of being in the queer community is we often get to choose our family and choose our community. And so you do get to choose that, and you do get to choose the people that you surround yourself with. And there are people that want you here.
What about Catholic educators? What would you want to say to them?
I think it's important that Catholic educators know what message that they're putting out into the world. And so, as I said before, the fundamental teaching is love thy neighbor, love the people around you, they deserve respect. And so by not even supporting, by not actively opposing the participation in a rainbow tent, a tent that's there to just promote inclusion, you are saying that it's okay for those people to take up space. It's not saying that you support gay marriage. It's saying, yes, you are a human being. You deserve to take up space. And so I think Catholic educators and educators across the board need to be intentional about their inclusion. And being intentional means allowing students to find spaces that they feel included in. And so if there's a student that wants to participate in the rainbow tent because that's where they feel safe, they should feel like they can. If there's a student that doesn't want to, that's also totally reasonable. But, going someplace where there's inclusive dress up isn't, promoting gay marriage. It's promoting being inclusive, allowing people to express themselves how they want to.
Regan Wilson is a former Catholic high school student who lives in Saskatoon. The CBC asked for an interview with someone from the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools. The division declined our request. We have also, as a station, reached out to the Roman Catholic Diocese of Saskatoon and are told that the bishop is not able to comment this week. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations has now commented on the situation. The FSIN said in a news release that it firmly condemns any form of discrimination, including the recent comments made by the Catholic School Superintendent Tom Hickey. The FSIN says the comments undermine the cultural identities and self-esteem of Indigenous students and within the Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus community. Our next guest says she feels like the recent directive from the Saskatoon Catholic school system moves back decades of progress. Patty Rowley was raised Catholic and became an advocate for LGBTQ plus students during her career as a teacher. More than 20 years ago, she started the first Gay Straight Alliance, or GSA, at Mount Royal College. GSA now stands for Gender and Sexuality Alliance, and Patty Rowley is on the line now. Patty, thank you so much for taking time for us today.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching out.
Patty, you wrote an email to the Greater Saskatoon Catholic School Superintendent Tom Hickey. What was your message?
Well, you'd mentioned some of the comments about going backwards decades. I also said that his directive is not only harmful, it's also hurtful and dangerous. And I asked him to reconsider and retract. I have not yet heard from Superintendent Hickey, and I'm going to follow up with a phone call. One of my colleagues did actually phone him, and he did reach out, but it was telephone tag, and I'm not sure if he got a hold of Superintendent Hickey. I actually, about 20 years ago, I actually had a conversation with Father Beechner, who has now passed away. He was our high school priest when I attended Edie Fian High School back in the 70s. I'm old. And he asked me, he found out that I started the first GSA, and he asked to meet with me to be a support for queer Catholic students that attend the Greater Saskatoon GSCS. I'm just going to go by Catholic system now because that's easier to say. But we met, and his concern was their spiritual and mental health. And he, as I said in my email, he was worried about the suicide rates of these vulnerable youth. And for this email, this directive to go out in 2023 is absolutely ridiculous. And I just hope that the Catholic system sees sense and retracts the statement. I know, they've talked the talk, to use a phrase, an overly used phrase. They've talked the talk by issuing this apology email, but they need to walk the walk, and they need to, you can't just say, we're sorry, we didn't intend to be judgmental or hurtful. They need to show it in actions.
What are your thoughts on the diocese, the Archbishop at any rate, supporting that original directive?
Oh, good question. I am raised Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic, so I don't know if I can cop out without a comment, but I think, as I understand, the Pope many months ago said about the 2F LGBTQ plus community to love everyone and accept everyone. And if the head of the Catholic diocese says that, then I think the people under him should be the same.
Now, as you mentioned, Patty, you helped start the first GSA in the province. It's like 22 years ago now.
Yes.
I'm curious, what was the climate like at that time that you felt like something like this was needed?
Well, I initially went to I'm sitting in an abandoned classroom at the high school here in Martinsville. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
It just adds ambience, Patty. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I initially went to, we have our annual Teachers Institute and Convention, and I initially went to, a session on homophobia. And back then, we basically dealt with homophobia, and now we've changed it to Gender and Sexual Alliance or Gender and Sexual Diverse Club because we make it more inclusive to deal with trans students as well. The climate, I have to tell you, I had the most supportive principal, superintendent, director of education. They embraced this. It was, I remember our very first open house at Mount Royal Collegiate. We had a table set up. The GSA had a table set up, and we had rainbow balloons and flags, and it was just wonderful. Every teacher on staff wore a rainbow ribbon, and I had parents come up. Remember, this is 2001 or 2002. I had parents come up and say, "This is fabulous." And everybody knew somebody in the queer community, whether they were an adult or whether they were a student or a small child coming up into the high school system. And they were, I had comments saying, I wish we had this when we were in high school. And so when I went to this session on homophobia, I said, why don't we have something in Saskatoon? Like the queer students, the 2S LGBTQ plus students, need a safe place, a soft place to land. They spend so many hours in school, they need support and active support.
Did you get any pushback at all?
I think more out of fear, because it was the first one. I had a comment saying, you can't have this club because it's too specific of a club, and it's way too specific. And I said, so you mean, if those people that know me know that I'm kind of a bulldog when I get a passion. And I said, so you mean like the senior boys basketball team isn't specific enough? Like that you have to be identified male, you have to be good in basketball, perhaps somewhat tall. And so that kind of shot down that argument. I also had two members from the Gay and Lesbian Health Services, which is now out Saskatoon, meet with some administration just to know that not only is there support within the school system, but also there's support within the community. And I have out Saskatoon still on speed dial. They're an amazing resource for any educators and any human beings.
Well, what difference did you see the GSA make in the lives of the students who were part of it?
Oh, they felt safe. They were able to, and it was interesting because it was a student-run club and still is, but they needed a little bit of a push. And like I said, I talk way too much. So the first year, my colleague and I, Travis Myrle, we sort of ran the meetings, and then they got comfortable, they got safe. And the very first meeting we had, I did a GSA blurb to all the English classes, walked in and said, we're starting a GSA next month. We're meeting every Friday at noontime. It's a gay straight alliance, so everyone is welcome. And that first meeting we had over 30 people attend. And I broke into tears because that's who I am.
Why do you think something as seemingly innocent or obnoxious as visiting the rainbow tent at a children's festival is seen as a threat?
Well, like I said, it's ridiculous. And I was talking to a group of students at Martinsville High School here because they were asking me why I'm all amped up. And so I shared my story with them. And I said, like, what do they think's going to happen? These children are going to come out of the rainbow tent and all of a sudden be drag queens. And if so, what's wrong with that? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think, I don't know, they need to, the Catholic system, the higher ups, because I know a lot of teachers in the Catholic system that do not feel this way, they need to educate themselves. And like I said, I hate to use this commonly phrase, but they need to walk the walk. It's ridiculous. It's celebrating diversity. It's celebrating inclusion. And there is not a better way to do that at the Nutrients Children's Festival.
A lot has changed in the last 22 years, but I know you're still in schools as a substitute teacher.
That's correct. Yeah.
How have you seen schools change in terms of being safe and inclusive spaces for queer students and staff in that time? Is it progressing, or has it begun to regress, do you think?
No, I think, I think it's progressing. Like I'm subbing right now in Prairie Spirit School Division. I live in Martinsville. So right now I'm at the high school, and I sub at Venture Heights School, at Valley Manor, the two elementary schools. And I am so happy to say that every school has a rainbow club, Rainbow Nights it's called at Venture Heights. It's called the GSA here at the high school. And it's just, when I see inclusive posters, and it just makes my heart swell. I think it's progressing, but again, we still, as educators, we still have work to do.
Well, let's finish our conversation, Patty, by talking about that. What do you think what work still needs to be done?
Um, well, here's me talking the talk. I think every school should have a GSA, Catholic and public and private, to take care of their vulnerable youth. And students school is one of the stable environments that students, young humans, go to, and their teachers is possibly one of their stable adults that they can go to for safety and support. So the teachers that are out there that are walking the walk, I commend you. I love you. I think just keep going and hope to see you at the rally tomorrow.
All right. Patty, thanks so much for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for contacting me.
Patty Rowley was raised Roman Catholic and became an advocate for LGBTQ plus students during her career as a teacher. More than 20 years ago now, she started the first Gay Straight Alliance, or GSA, at Mount Royal Collegiate here in Saskatoon. For the remainder of the program, we're going to focus on what is being done in Saskatchewan schools to make them safe places for queer students and staff. Our guests have generously agreed to take part in the show today because they think the good work of building safe spaces is worth talking about. We know June is Pride Month. If you have students attending schools in Saskatchewan, what is your student's school doing to celebrate Pride? What does it mean to you as a parent, knowing your child's school is supportive of LGBTQS plus rights? If you attended school before they had GSAs, what difference do you think it would have made in your experience, in your life? Again, our email open today, bluesky@cbc.ca. Our guests for the next little bit, until they have to get back to the classroom, are Rayleigh Perkins and Jason Howes. Rayleigh is a teacher librarian who works bringing LGBTQ representation into the school. She also hosts a podcast called Queer Ed. She's on the line now. Hi, Rayleigh.
Hello.
And Jason Howes has more than a decade of experience running GSAs in Regina's public schools. He's one of the leads of the GSA at Harbour Landing School in Regina, and he's on the line as well. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Garth.
Jason, let's start with a talk about GSAs. Just how common are they in schools, at least in Regina at this point?
Well, obviously, I can only speak from the lens of the public system here that I'm working with. But I think we're in a place now where most of our schools, if not all of our schools, have available supports like GSAs there for their students. And I think that's huge. I remember, back when we started, I was part of the first middle years group that existed at Wascana School. And boy, oh boy, it was wonderful, but it was lonely times. And man, that representation has really blown up in the last 10 years.
How important are GSAs?
Rayleigh, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, they are critical. They are so important for our kids and our families to have a space where they can just be, ask questions, just have a space. They need that, and I think that without having the GSAs, we run the risk of those children not having a place to be and not wanting to be in the schools.
What role do they serve beyond being like a safe place? What happens at a GSA?
I think having a safe space is really the key there, and that's kind of the reason for existence. But you also have a really important social outlets for a lot of the kids as well. I know that, a lot of our kids, especially our gender diverse kids, they go through school with a bit of a disguise a lot of the times, and having a place where you can go and just be yourself and take that off. And we need to appreciate just the emotional fatigue of kind of disguising a part of yourself on a daily basis, and just having that outlet for socially kind of accepting people. I think that's huge.
Well, walk us through a typical GSA meeting.
Go ahead, Jason.
Sure. I don't know that there is a typical. I mean, a lot of times we'll come, and I want to give a shout out to the 4 just incredible educators that work with me on this at Harbor Landing School, and anyone doing this in their own schools as well. It's such an important service that kind of goes unrecognized. But in terms of a typical, like a lot of times we'll come with an activity, but we also just talked about just the importance of that social outlet. And a lot of times, it just is, pockets of kids laughing and talking, and it doesn't really always have to be more than that. I know as teachers, we often think we have to have every, moment of the day planned. But a lot of times when we look at what is bringing kids to the group, it's not, a need for another structured activity. It's really that inclusive element that they're wanting in that moment. Obviously, though, we have the action-based side of things. So as you mentioned, we are coming into June tomorrow, and lots of schools are going to be entering into some pretty fun and educational and just wonderfully affirming activities in their schools.
Now, as you mentioned, Pride Month starts tomorrow. I'll start with you, Rayleigh. With Pride Month coming up, what kind of things are planned in your school?
Yeah, so we are planning, there's lots of different events kind of across the school board. And so we do a lot of like readings, pride readings, celebrations, often spirit days with the different colors. I do a lot of outreach and education about why we have pride, because it is a celebration, but it does come from a place of conflict. And we worked really hard. And listening to Patty speak, I just wanted to shout out for being the trailblazer 20 years ago who started those GSAs. That would have been so challenging. We think of how hard it's been even in the last 10 years. And so we do a lot of education, but really we just want to create a day where we celebrate and acknowledge and really celebrate all of the members of our community. And that's how I approach it.
How about you, Jason? What's going on in your school?
Lots of things. So we have a crosswalk that we have been kind of responsible for since the first year that our school was open. We'll be giving that a bit of a facelift as well. And, we've got some traditional things that we tend to do every year. Our kids really enjoy taking certain books into younger classrooms and doing some readings with them, just kind of elevating certain, queer voices from the children's author community. We've got, button making. Kids really do love making buttons.
They really love it.
They will make 1,000 of them if you let them. So that tends to take on a life of its own, usually some sort of artistic outlet there. And then our kids have also prepared a bit of a did you know, sort of an educational piece for the screens around the school. As Patty said, we need to educate ourselves. And I think that's one thing that our division has really made clear recently, that, this is a priority to educate our workforce. We can't just allow, people to say, I didn't know, or I didn't want to do the wrong thing. We need to get to a place where the expectation, default setting is inclusion.
Now, I've got to let you go in just a couple of minutes, but Rayleigh, I'm curious, where do you see the most work needed when it comes to making schools safer places for queer or gender fluid students? Where do you think the work needs to be done?
I think when I think about this work, and I mean, it was funny when I heard Jason was going to be a co-guest with me today, because we hear a lot of the same voices in these conversations, and I, commend those people for doing the work, but we need more folks kind of being visible, doing the work, taking this sort of labor piece on, because, at my GSA, we're quite a small school, so it's just me and a couple of students planning all of the events for Pride, which is great, and I love that those students are empowered to do it. But if we had more staff and more teachers and just more community members who were engaging in this with us, we could be so much more visible. And I think that, to me, is where I see the work needing to be done, is we always seem to have that same core group of folks who show up to everything and really really do the work. But we need to just make that a little bit bigger and have more folks comfortable. And when Jason was talking about, they didn't feel comfortable doing the work, so like educating themselves, learning how to approach these topics, and I think that's where I see the work needing to go next.
Okay, and finally, before I let you go, Jason, when we heard about the experience of setting up the first GSA in the province some 22 years ago, when you look 20 years into the future, Jason, what are you hoping? What do you hope for? Where are we at the conversation around LGBTQS plus rights 20 years from now?
Well, I mean, the dream is that there isn't a conversation necessary, right? I mean, also just a shout out to Patty as well. That was wonderful. I loved hearing what she had to say about her experiences, and it's such an honorable, place to put your efforts as an educator. I think when I look 20 years into the future, hopefully we are not looking at this as an edgy topic that requires, news coverage. It's just an expectation in schools. Our kids come into schools with all sorts of different elements to their identity, and all of those should be validated and affirmed as they come into our buildings. We should be safe spaces for all of our students, and so. The reality is right now, a lot of our students, a lot of our queer and non-binary students especially face, regular mistreatment from their peers still. That still happens. And that bullying and harassment is still really, really underreported. And so it would be wonderful to believe that 20 years from now, that is not seen as something that puts a target on a kid's back, that it's just part of who they are, and is accepted and validated and, not seen as being a controversial issue.
All right. Well, Jason Rayleigh, thank you so much for taking part of your lunch hour to talk to us today. I know you have to get back to class. So, again, I'll thank you very much for your time and your input today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Garth. See you soon, Rayleigh.
Rayleigh Perkins and Jason Howes both work to make Regina public schools more safe and inclusive spaces. Now, we did reach out to Regina Catholic schools as well to be able to talk about the work they do to support students. However, no one was available to be part of our show, but we were given a statement, and here it is. Regina Catholic School Division remains focused on our own school communities. We strive for an educational environment which demonstrates respect for all and values each person as a child of God within the framework of Catholic teachings. We're working toward safer spaces for all, which includes 2 LGBTQ plus community members. The Regina Catholic School Division proudly supports gender and sexual diversity clubs in our schools in accordance with guidelines provided by the Ministry of Education as outlined in their Deepening the Discussion document and toolkit. This inclusive work is guided by Catholic teachings and Pope Francis's foundational commitment that the dignity of others is to be respected in all circumstances. Again, that was a statement we received from the Regina Catholic School Division. I'm going to share this email. Kira writes, "Hi Garth and Blue Sky crew. I'm a 40-year-old trans woman who attended Catholic schools from kindergarten through high school in Ontario. Though my time in high school, there were no GSAs or anything remotely similar for me to access. A GSA would have validated my identity, allowed me to live fully, reduced my severe depression and suicidal ideation, and not have pushed me deep into my self-doubt until I started transition at 36. My kids' school in Saskatoon has been fantastic in promoting the 2S LGBTQ plus community and have continued to make me feel part of their family. GSAs are a critical part of our schools and allow us queer kids to survive and thrive." We got this talk back from a parent in Regina and her 2 children.
Hello, I'm a mother of 2 gender diverse kids here in Regina, and I think their school does a really wonderful job of supporting them. So I'm going to actually ask my kids a few questions so that they can talk about what their school does. So let's start with my younger kid. When you're in your class, does your teacher use the correct pronouns that kids prefer?
Yes. Yes.
And how about bathrooms at school? How does that work?
2 are gendered just in case, but the rest are ungendered.
Great. And my older kid is able to take part in GSA, or Gender and Sexuality Alliance. Can you tell me about how that is structured?
Okay, so grade 3 to 8 can be in GSA, and they're divided into 2 groups: junior, which is grade 5 to 3, and senior, which is grade 6 to 8. We get to plan the events for the Pride Week at the end of the month, and we also help plan the Summit GSA at school.
Right, and I understand the Summit GSA was like a chance for other GSAs at other schools to come to your school and do a whole day of planning and working together. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Another thing that my older kid has been able to take part in the last year is some school sports. Can you talk about how they make sure that gender diverse kids are included in sports?
So usually they have to choose, which I don't really like doing, but in cross country running, they let it be girls and non-binary and boys and non-binary instead of just boys and girls, which kind of feels better to me. And in track and field, they did boys plus and girls plus. I kind of wish they didn't gender them at all, but I think they're doing better.
Right. Well, I'm glad your school is taking a lead on some of this stuff, and hopefully they can work even harder to make it so that kids that don't fit into girls or boys can take part in every part of school. And you've got one more thing to say?
Yep. Yes. Also, even if you're not in the GSA, you get to learn about stuff that you can do to help. I find it just really nice.
So you're talking about people learning to be allies, is that right?
Totally.
And my younger kid, do you feel safe when you're at school?
Yes.
I think I am just so happy that you go to a school where every kid is made to feel safe. So that's all we wanted to say. Thanks for having this topic. Bye.
That was Denis and her kids Oscar and Kike. They attend school in Regina. And again, folks, we're talking about the controversy sparked by the Greater Saskatoon Catholic School Division when a memo was sent to principals asking that the principals speak to teachers and chaperones and instruct them not to take students from the division to the Rainbow Tent that'll be set up at the upcoming Children's Festival here in Saskatoon. That position was this week supported by the Roman Catholic Diocese, by the Bishop of Saskatoon, and it is our topic today. There seems to be lately more and more threats or backlash to the to SLGBTQ plus community. And this is the latest example of that. We'd like to hear from you today. Our email is open. It's bluesky@cbc.ca. And what do you think of this controversy sparked by the Greater Saskatoon Catholic School Division's directive not to take students to the Rainbow Tent? It makes you wonder. We heard earlier in the program that it's been 22 years since the first GSA was established in a Saskatchewan high school. What does this tell us about what has been accomplished in the last 22 years when the rubber hits the road, as they say? Again, our emails are available for your comments today. It's bluesky@cbc.ca, bluesky@cbc.ca. Share your thoughts with us anytime now. Again, our emails are open 24/7. Our next guest says she feels better knowing she is sending her trans child to a school that is safe and inclusive to queer students. Annabelle Townsend lives in Regina's Cathedral neighborhood. She's on the line now. Annabelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for the invite.
Go ahead, Annabelle. Go ahead.
I did see the thing about the Saskatoon Catholic School Division, and it's so frustrating that this is still happening, given all the positive things that your previous guests were just talking about. And I consider myself very lucky that we have got an exceptionally good school that is very supportive of all the kids, and it's the whole reasoning behind having GSAs and everything else is entirely because of emails that circulate through the Catholic School Board. That's what you're up against, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You know, Annabelle, as I alluded to here a moment ago, it seems like recently anyway, every day or every other day we see something, someone, some institution, to be blunt, attacking LGBTQ plus rights. Mm-hmm. What's it like to have a trans child knowing that the world can be such a harsh place?
Well, it was very worrying. I mean, the news kind of blindsided me. He came out a couple of years ago now, and I did not see it coming. So the fact that there's also, at the same time, yes, it is concerning, and yes, there's a lot of hate in the world, and I can't say it's easy, but at the same time, there is also so much more support than there used to be. And I say I didn't see it coming when my eldest sort of came out as trans, but I also think that maybe there would have been far more trans children when I was a kid if we'd had this level of awareness and the vocabulary to even talk about those sort of things, because I would not have been confident coming out at age 11, 30 years ago, because the world has changed very much so, and it's changing for the better in that there is that much more awareness and acceptance, and it's being talked about in schools, which is fantastic, because it can only help, I think. And I do think a lot of the sort of discrimination and the sort of anti-queer rhetoric that goes round is a reaction to the fact that it is being more talked about more often. Yeah. And it works both ways, unfortunately.
Does your child generally feel safe when they go to school?
I think so. And again, I think I'm in an extremely privileged and lucky position to be able to say that, because it wasn't even a big deal at the school. They had introduction sessions at the beginning of the year, and they said, "What are your pronouns?" And that was it. That was the only question. I did sort of email the school and say, my kids changed their name. Can you accommodate this? Absolutely fine. And they just got on with it. It's been really good.
What other kind of things does the school do to make them feel safe and able to express themselves?
Well, I think your previous guest was saying that, and the lady who called in with non-binary children in the school, the only really issues that my son comes home complaining about is having to get changed to do swimming or canoeing or whatever they're doing, they don't feel confident sort of getting changed in front of other people, but then who does, right? I don't know quite what goes on in the bathroom situation, but there's options. And we had track and field recently, and he said, I'm going with boys, and that was it. So he didn't win anything, but it was nice that it just wasn't questioned, So I think for the most part they're very accommodating, and what's nice is that nobody makes a big deal, and that helps a lot. And really, I'm amazed about how confident he's managed to become, because being 12 sucks, right? Nobody has an easy time when you're kind of prepubescent, and I think being trans on top of everything else, it makes life very, very difficult, and it's really good that they've got a supportive community.
How old was your child when they told you they were trans?
Just before they turned 11.
What kind of things were you able to do to make the transition easier?
Well, I still trip over pronouns all the time, and I get kicked every time I do. So, other than that, I mean, we went and got a haircut, and I sort of got pins with their new name on and everything like that. And I mean, I'll support him to the end of the earth, really, and however they feel comfortable.
I want to share an email from Dawn. It's a little bit long, and I want to get it in before we're done, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts. And Dawn emails, thank you very much for talking about the importance of GSA in schools. I'm an educator, GSA teacher, facilitator, and a parent of a sexually diverse child. As teachers, the work we do in our schools to support 2S LGBTQA+ youth is incredibly important. When my colleague and I started what was then called the Gay Straight Alliance in our elementary school in 2018, we wanted to create a safe space for 2S LGBTQIA+ students and allies in grades 5 to 8 to hang out together for a one lunch hour a week and talk about what we could do to improve our school for all students. The first year, we quickly realized how important our role in the school was going to be when we learned about the amount of homophobic and transphobic bullying that was going on behind the scenes, particularly in the senior grades. Students who came to the GSA spoke up about how they frequently worried about whether what they said or did would be called out as gay, or if they would be targeted with their gender expression did not follow the norm, caused them a lot of stress. The GSA students helped identify areas where we could be doing more to educate their peers and their teachers about gender and sexualities, and pointed out ways they felt unsafe in school. We were able to take these student concerns back to our colleagues, to our administration team, so that we could address them as a staff. Didn't take long before we began to see changes in the way students interacted with each other, less tolerance for homophobia and transphobia as students developed the language and understanding to stand up and be allies. During his elementary school years, my own child experienced bullying because of his sexuality. His school did not have a GSA. The bullying affected his mental and physical health, and my usually happy-go-lucky child missed many days of school. I can't help but wonder how different his experience in those middle years would have been if he had had the opportunity to attend a safer space with allies in his school. Before we run out of time, Annabelle, I know that you're generally happy with what's going on in your child's school. But are there still issues? Is there still bullying? Does your child still come home occasionally?
I'm not going to say there's nothing because I'm fairly sure there is. We've been lucky in that my son's never experienced it yet, at least not in school. There's certainly been a lot of comments from people outside the school. But, you know, I'm also very proud of the fact that he's competent enough to sort of either withstand it or, you know, answer back and say, oi, no, you know. And like I said, I certainly don't remember ever being that confident in myself when I was 12. So it's been great. But I know every school has got bullies and every school has got its issues. Sure. I think it's getting easier. And in our experience, it's been good. That doesn't mean to say that it doesn't happen. And also, most 12-year-olds don't tell their parents anything.
Well, that's true. We've only got about a minute left, Annabelle, but I know you have a business very close to Connaught School. How have you seen that school celebrate Pride?
We're putting out all our Pride and queer literature tomorrow in the bookstore, so we'll have that up all month. And again, even with our customer base, we do try and stock a lot of queer lit, particularly for sort of young adults as well. And there's a few really fantastic series that have been super popular, and it's kind of interesting to see because we do so many special orders for people, and it's great to see what people are ordering because I think particularly with young adult literature, everything is getting a lot more diverse.
Okay. Annabelle, thank you so much for taking time for us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Annabelle Townsend is the parent of a trans child attending Regina's public schools. I'm going to share one last email. This comes from Gayleen, who writes, the idea of keeping kids out of the rainbow tent is hypocritical and a loss of a terrific learning experience. Kids can learn that not all people are the same, and that's a wonderful thing. As for the question of the existence of the Catholic school system, that's fine. They should not receive any tax money. That is, they should be privately funded, and that goes for any school other than the public system. The curriculum should, of course, be provincially mandated. Non-public schools should be supervised the same way by the same organizations as the public system. Okay, that's our time together for today. Again, any thoughts you have, drop us a line. It's bluesky@cbc.ca.